So great, I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with the king on that, he'll just the same. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I said, can I be a legend? Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes?
Good night, good night, good night, and welcome to yet another episode of This Just In. We have a full house for you here tonight on the YouTube live stream. I'm Marsha Boyce. Our special guest tonight, former member of the Houston Rockets organization, Devan Blair. We call him coach here as he's also the coach of the Barbados national team. The usual gang is also here, Justin Marvel and Neil Hoy. Good night, gentlemen.
Good night, Marsha.
Good night, everybody. Welcome back, Devan.
Thank you.
Yes, so good to have you back. Now, Devan, I know we had a planned schedule, but I just wanted to throw one question out to you. Tonight, we're dealing with all NBA, the trade deadlines, the MVPs. We're going to get into all of that. But I wanted to ask you, being right there, having been on the floor, how hard or how difficult is it for you to watch these NBA games this season, knowing, you're not touching base, smelling the action, so to speak?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult because you're just trained for so long, and was it 5 years and then college before that. Your whole life revolves around breaking down every single possession. And that's what I did for, almost a decade straight, counting my time in college. So this being my first time kind of stepping away, it's nice a little bit because you can kind of relax, but at the same time, it's difficult to watch a game and not do it through a coach's lens. So it's hard to just be a casual fan and not critique everything that's happening on the floor. So yeah, sometimes, I'll find myself just not turning the game on just because I just want to relax. I might just watch golf for a little bit instead of watching the game just because I don't want to get stressed out worrying about what I think they're doing incorrectly. So it's definitely different, and I'm very much excited to get back on the other side of things.
Well, unfortunately, we're forcing you to put on that coaching analytical hat tonight. So apologies for the stress in advance. But let's jump right into it.
Yep.
We're going to start tonight, taking a closer look at the LA Lakers and Anthony Davis, all that's going on there. So starting with you, how far do you think the Lakers can go without Anthony Davis?
I mean, without Anthony Davis, they're going to be in trouble. The league is too good, and especially the Western Conference is too good and too loaded for them to, I think, have a real chance. Now, you still have LeBron, and LeBron's going to be LeBron and be very, very good. So barring any other injuries to their roster, you're still looking at a top 4 seed and a potential first round win. I think, depending on what their matchup is, they should get out of the first round still. But if they want to make any real noise, you have to have Anthony Davis. And that's not a knock on the Lakers or talking about depth or anything like that. If you take the best player or second best player, your 1A, 1B player off of any team in the league, it's going to be the same story. So not so much a knock on the Lakers as it is, you have to be healthy as a full team to have a chance to win in the NBA this year. So, yeah, they're going to need him if they want to actually have a shot at going back-to-back.
Now, Neil, as our resident Lakers fan, sporting your big bird yellow tonight,
I wanted to
how
talk
are you
about
feeling?
Big Bird Yellow.
Oh my! How did that get there? I didn't realize. Oh wow!
Really now. How are you feeling about your team's chances minus Anthony Davis?
Well, as coach said, we have a problem. As much as LeBron James is playing otherworldly at 36, and as much as he is turning back the hands of time and putting up some numbers that are just impressive for someone his age, we do need that Anthony Davis guy because he is excellent on offense. He is a low post bully, hits the mid-range, hits the corner three, hits the perimeter three. He's also very good as a rim protector and rebounder. And he knows how to find people out of the post. So now, when you take away that player that is so good on both sides of the basketball, you have problems. Montrezl Harrell, we have Montrezl Harrell and some other guys down low. Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol is good in passing and he is good in shooting the three, but he just is not Anthony Davis because he's a much older player. So the unfortunate thing is you don't have the young legs to get up and down the floor. You don't have a low post presence to keep guys honest. To pass over the double team. You don't have someone to hit the mid-range or the three if it comes to for a driving kick from LeBron or whomever. So we do have a bit of problems without Anthony Davis because as the team is constructed now, it's pretty much LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and next man up kind of thing, right? Where any night it could be Dennis Schroeder as number 3. We see Talon could be number 3. We see, Alex Caruso, Contavious Caldwell-Pope, but these guys are not consistent on a night in, night out basis. Who you want to be consistent night in, night out is LeBron James and Anthony Davis. If it is only LeBron James, the other guys are not as consistent every night to give you those wins. That's why we saw a bunch of losses, especially with Dennis Schroeder being out. So, definitely need Anthony Davis. There is no doubt that he is. LeBron James is 1A, as Justin likes to say, but Anthony Davis is 1B.
And that's the problem is not the construction of the roster because obviously the team is top heavy. That's not a secret. That's what they went in. And you get role players, you get pieces to fit around, knowing full well that you will have Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who to me are a great pair. They complement each other perfectly. The issue is, for me, has always been, and I don't think people talk about this enough, is Anthony Davis is very injury prone. And part of the Lakers' problem this year, you could have survived stretches last season because of the depth you had in your front court when you had JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Now, as much as you have, I want to say, Marc Gasol, Neil, brace yourself for this. Marc Gasol has been atrocious. Marc Gasol should have been, I know a coach can't say these things, but Marc Gasol should have allowed, you also allowed Marc Gasol to retire. Quite frankly,
he's old.
And you should have allowed him to retire to Spain. Quite frankly, Marc Gasol has been bad. Marc Gasol is not good enough to stay in front of anybody. Marc Gasol, I want to say, is shooting 37%. I think his only addition right now is his ability to pass. I saw him hit a couple of threes against Golden State last night. And as good as Montrezl Harrell is scoring around the basket, he's a defensive liability, as you know, from the Clippers days. And he doesn't really provide much in terms of rebounding defensively and in terms of defense, period, or rim protection at that, because he's very small and undersized. But I'll let Coach jump in here. Reality is, I think, without Anthony Davis, your front court depth this season is being exposed.
Yeah, and that's definitely true, is that they just don't have the depth that you need. But in defense to Marc Gasol, he wasn't brought on to be the guy if Anthony Davis goes down. Marc Gasol's there you have a veteran presence who's won a championship. When you get to the playoffs, he knows what to do. He'll be better than he is during the regular season, and he's going to be able to give Anthony Davis a breather. That's why he's there. So now you're looking at he's getting a lot more minutes than he probably signed up for, to be honest. And his production level just can't be where it has to be. I mean, let's be honest, there's probably 0 people in the league that can replace Anthony Davis on the floor. So they've got to do it by committee, and they have a weird committee behind Anthony Davis to try to. I think their depth is good with Anthony Davis because you can throw in bigs that do a lot of different things. But when you don't have him, then those bigs kind of get lost because they're specialists at what they do. They can't do everything.
So then, guys, bearing all of this in mind, who should the Lakers look to bring in, if anybody, before the trade deadline? Neil, do you have anybody that you have your eye on as the resident Lakers fan?
Andre Drummond. If we could somehow, that'd be a trade. Unfortunately, we may have to give it some pieces, but I have no problem in trying to get Andre Drummond. He is a guy that can give you double-digit points and rebounds every night on a very efficient shooting. Sometimes he gets a bit weird, but we'll not talk about that. But he's very good at rebounds. He's very good at scoring the ball when you need it, and he's very good at blocking shots. He protects the paint as best as he could. We're not looking for another Anthony Davis, as coach said. We're just looking for someone to stem the tide. We don't have anyone to stem the tide. When Anthony Davis goes out, we essentially got to play small ball or play slow ball, depending on if Montrezl Harrell or Marc Gasol is there. But really and truly, if we can get someone like Andre Drummond to kind of give us like a poor man's AD, I think that will be good. Sure, you won't get those nice little perimeter jumpers or those little mid-range shots, but yes, we would get good activity around the basket, good offensive rebounds, good defensive rebounds, the blocks protecting the paint so that Anthony could get his breather or until he comes back from injury.
Who are you willing to give up?
I was waiting for that.
That's a good question.
That no is a question that I answer to. We don't have anybody to give up. Unfortunately, what we can give up Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell for one guy. Because obviously the Cavaliers will want somebody to fill that gap of Andre Drummond. The only thing I could think of is we just recently had Damian Jones. I don't know, throwing the Antetokounmpo. I don't know, Antetokounmpo. I really am being hopeful, but
the problem is going to be is that you have to be able to get close to the salary. And due to the construction of the team, I have the trade machine pulled up right now. Due to the construction of the team, you can't. You're so top heavy, you don't have guys that you can really throw in. So the only money that you actually have is Schroeder. Probably can't do that.
Oh, you definitely can't do that. Definitely can't do that.
Hell no.
Caldwell Pope is 12. So he would have to be in it. Montrez he would have to be in it. And you're still short about $6 million.
I think, coach, you're walking away because for me, the obvious starting point for any trade that Cleveland's not just salaries matching, but it has to be beneficial to Cleveland. Like, you're not going to give away something for nothing. So Neil's not going to want to hear this, but the starting point for any trade to Cleveland has to start at Kyle Kuzma. Like, you don't get away from that. You have to start.
But you know what? But just so you know, at this point though, as much as I'm a sympathizer for Kyle Kuzma, I have no problem in seeing the back of him because we are getting good production from the talent. We are getting good production from it, like man up. So I have no problem in Kyle is very flashy. He's very stylish. He had hit some big threes for us in some games. But if it means getting a low post presence that can somehow stem the tide for Anthony Davis while he's out, or if he goes down again, or if he gets tired for a deep playoff run. It's about the championship in the end.
So are you saying then that you're comfortable getting rid of both Kyle Kuzma and let's say Montrezl Harrell or Kyle Kuzma? I don't know how the numbers are there punching for coach, but if you get rid of Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, and let us say Contavious Caldwell-Pope, because in my estimation, right, that really just puts you do that.
Sorry, you guys cut out there a little bit. If you asked me a question, I didn't hear it.
Right, I was asking, coach, does it work? Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, and let's for argument's sake say, and then you throw in Contavious Caldwell-Pope for Andre Drummond. Does that work?
Nope, those three you are still does not work because of luxury tax. Let's try.
So you see, Neil, you're in trouble because that goes back again to what he said. You're built so top heavy.
The question was who would they want?
Fair enough.
The question is can Andre Drummond's agent work out a buyout and you get him that way? Because I think that might be your only chance.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to say. So, other than that situation, no. I agree with you, Neil. Andre Drummond is probably his bet. I have to hope for a buyout because I don't know the nature of Anthony Davis's injury or the timeline that he's expected to return. I think another 2 weeks or so. But Without Anthony Davis, let's just for argument's say that you do get Andre Drummond. My thing is, if you get Andre Drummond, it would have to be for a situation of you're expecting Anthony Davis to miss a lengthy part of the season because they're fit together. I don't see how that works. Like as much as I guess I saw Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis play together last season. So I mean, but I don't know. The fit would kind of be like a bit odd. So it'd be almost like if you bring in Andre Drummond, it would have to be for a situation where you don't expect Anthony Davis back anytime. Just can't play both of them on the court at the same time.
Well, guys, now turning our attention away from the Lakers and generally to the rest of the league. With this trade deadline looming then, who do you expect, to do the most movement or to do the most business? Which teams do you think will be the biggest buyers, the biggest sellers? Which players do you think are definitely on their way out or on their way in, for that matter?
You always have to look at the contenders, right? But you don't want to look at the very because they're probably okay where they are. Obviously, if there's one piece that can maybe get them over the hump, it's tricky. I don't know if any of the contenders are like we have to get somebody right now. Mostly because all of them are pretty salary capped. Mm-hmm. Philly, like I'm just looking at the Eastern Conference standings right now. Philly probably okay. They're number one in the league. Joel Embiid's playing out of his mind. Obviously, they had those Kyle Lowry rumors. I personally don't think that makes a ton of sense because now you're moving Ben Simmons off. He needs the ball to be effective, right? Or you go back to what they tried in the bubble, putting him in the dunker last year, and that didn't work. So I'm saying Philly's out. If they do anything, Daryl's going to do something. Well, let's be very clear about that. Daryl, I don't think, has ever sat at a trade deadline and not made a move. So Philly's going to be a buyer in some capacity. I just don't think it's going to be a blockbuster. Brooklyn, they need a big. They need Andre Drummond probably. They can't trade for him, just like the Lakers can't. They don't have the money. They don't have the talent to get out. Milwaukee, they already traded away their future for Drew Holiday. So
crazy move, I thought, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I think you had to do it, but mixed results so far because he hasn't played enough. He's been in health and safety protocols. So New York, they would be very silly to do anything drastic because they're playing well. You've got young talent. The only talent people want from you is probably Julius Randle is obviously a trade piece that you should probably watch out for because maybe he's got 1 year left, 2 years. He's playing really well. Does he fit in the New York Knicks timeline of what they want going forward? I don't think so. So he could be a trade piece, but who's gonna get him? It's gonna move the needle for him. That's really the question. Is he's perennially a really good player on a not very good team, which is maybe not fair to him just because of the situations he's been in, right? He was really good in LA. They were terrible. And now he's been good in New York. They've been better this year, obviously. So maybe he's turning that tide. And there's been articles about, him taking that next step and learned last year when he was the number one guy how to kind of lead a team. So potentially him. Miami, they're always in the market. Would they want to sell for Victor Oladipo right now? Right? Because he just turned down his contract extension. He wants a longer term deal. Is anyone willing to roll that dice on him? He's probably the biggest name out there that I think is real on getting traded. But why would Miami mortgage their future for a guy that's going to be a free agent in 3 months? If they don't think Vic is able to turn the needle enough for them or move the needle enough for them to win, probably not. So you don't want to mortgage your future for that. Boston needs to do something. They need to buy something.
Oh yes, Marsha, they really do. Yes, Marsha, they really do. But we will, we will get there for sure.
So I know we have a Boston section coming up, so we don't have to dive too deep on them. Charlotte, have no idea what they're doing. Apologies, my dog is trying to get a treat. I don't see Charlotte doing anything unless you move Terry Rozier for someone who needs a guard because you have LaMelo now. He's proving to be very good.
Like the Lakers, not the Lakers, the Clippers. Sorry, that need a guard.
Yeah, sure, but
does he answer the Clippers' problem? And I don't really think so.
No.
Because Terry Rozier is just another shot maker, and they have enough of those there in Clippers.
Yep.
I think maybe Coach may not want to touch on this for whatever. One of the bigger sellers in my mind are going to be the Houston Rockets, and I see two potential. Like
that's
the big one.
That's a fire sale right there.
That's going to be a fire sale. Like biggest name, and that's Victor Oladipo. Like after he turned down that extension, it was clear that he is going to go somewhere where we don't know. He's going to be moved. He's not staying there. The second name, and not so obvious one I'm looking at in Houston, I don't see them sticking around on Eric Gordon, considering, as you said, their timeline, and they're going to just strip it all down. You see them started already with DeMarcus Cousins. Oladipo is going to be out 3 doors. So it doesn't make any sense paying what you owe Eric Gordon on a team that you know is not very good. Like he was there when you were looking at championships, but no, that window is obviously closed the moment that James Harden went through the front door. So they are going to be big buyers. The big question, as Devin alluded to, who has the money or the assets to acquire somebody like Victor Oladipo or a Julius Randle, who does not really fit New York's timeline either? I don't know what San Antonio could give up, because I think that Julius Randle fits the San Antonio situation quite readily. The feel about LaMarcus Aldridge going forward, et cetera, but I think that if you feel you're San Antonio, you want to be able to stay in this playoff run. You're not going to win a title this year, obviously not, or the next. But Julius Randle helps you get into the playoffs and maybe win a... No, I'm late. But at least keeps you in the playoff run.
Don't do that.
So I see Houston being big sellers. Brooklyn is going to have to get you big to... Because it's... For me, I think it's title or bust this season for Brooklyn. And we're going to stay away from Marsh's Boston Celtics for a second.
Now you guys have been mentioned. Devin, you wanted to go ahead?
No, I mean, you can go ahead. I was just going to hit on the fire sale that Houston's going to have to do.
Okay, go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, on Eric Gordon for sure, and he makes a lot of money. And again, who's going to take on Eric? I think he has 3 years left because he just signed an extension last season. So who's going to take on another guy who is injury prone and is making whatever he's making, $18 million a year, something like that? Who's going to be able to risk that money for a 6-man type of guy? Now, he can be a starter, of course. He can be a starter on a championship team. Absolutely, he could, because he's that good. But again, it's who has that kind of money to do that type of deal. Now, this is just me being a fan and coach, and this is how I would do it. If people will probably really dislike me for this, but
I love it.
If Charlotte would do Terry Rozier for Eric, I would do that deal in a heartbeat if I was Houston.
Didn't think of that one. Didn't see that one coming.
I didn't either until I just looked at the standings. I think Eric with Gordon Hayward, with LaMelo, and your PJ Washington, your Cody, whatever, in Charlotte, I think that's a very interesting team. Because Terry Rozier needs the ball. Eric doesn't need the ball as much, but Eric needs a point guard who can pass him the ball, which LaMelo does. So that would be very interesting. Do I think it'll happen? Absolutely not. But that's a kind of move, like, that would be like a sneaky good move for Charlotte if they want to actually like have a chance to do something in the next 2 years.
You have any moves there, Neil, that you're thinking of? And I mean, don't mean your Lakers, obviously.
No. I mean, I was thinking about it, right? And a bit about Kyle Lowry. it would be interesting to see if they do make any moves with regards to him. All I know is that the LA Clippers have parts of a point guard. They have the defense of Patrick Beverley. They have the size of what's his name, Reggie Jackson. They have who's the other guard they have that's not good? Oh, Lou Williams. Lou Williams is old. He can make a shot, but he's also, in my estimation, I think that they have parts of that's three players that you can leverage to get some other player. There's I understand what you guys are saying in terms of Terry Rozier being another shot maker, and the Clippers are top block with guys that need the ball in their hands to be successful. But I think it can hurt to have a point guard that's aggressive when it comes to putting pressure on the paint and driving and hitting shots or whatever, especially exploiting matchups at the point guard position. No, Kyle Lowry, the tooth in basketball years. But he is a heady guard. He's a guard that brings a lot of intensity and energy, especially on defense, and he can make the play. You know what I mean? If you need him to. So I'm just interested. Another name that came up. I was doing some research, and I was saying Blake Griffin conundrum. Blake Griffin is 31, making $34 million this season, and he is in the Badlands of Detroit. No. He wants to be traded. I'm sure Detroit would love to trade him, but it is just unfortunate that he's going to be a free agent next season, and I don't know what they can do to get back anything instead of him just walking. So I don't know if, Coach, you have any insight on that in terms of, do you see any situation where they can kind of get any return on Devin is shaking his head.
I don't. I mean, you said it. He's 31 years old, making $34 million. I think again, he's going to be a guy that if he's moving, it's going to be on the buyout market because nobody give up that much to get him, not to match that salary. It's not worth it just because there's so many unknowns with his health, his injury history. Yeah. His production has been, up and down a lot. Yeah, I mean, he had a really good year. I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago. He had that stretch where he was unbelievable. Yeah. So, you would hope maybe that's still there, but it's not worth a $34 million risk. Obviously, you're not paying all that if this is his last year. I don't know if he has one more after this or what his structure is. He has one more after this year. Yeah, no chance. and also buyout and difficult because now you're looking at more of like a stretch provision situation. I don't even know if you can only stretch 1 year. So it would have to be a situation where he's so unhappy he's willing to take a lot less money to walk away, which I cannot speak for him, but I would be hard pressed to pass up, rest of this year plus next year. You're looking at, $42-something million. I'm okay hanging out in Detroit for that.
Now, Justin, both you and Devin mentioned the Brooklyn Nets. So I'm going to propose a head-to-head. Let's say comparing the Brooklyn Nets with the Utah Jazz, which team would be more likely to come away with the title?
Ooh.
I'll let you start, Coach.
Oh, you want me to start? Okay.
Yeah. Coach, that's the bait and switch. Be careful. He set you up.
That's fine. I'll start. Brooklyn. Now, this is both teams being healthy. Obviously, that's a very big caveat. I'm going to say Brooklyn. They have too much firepower, and I think if the Lakers are healthy, I think to the finals is easier than Utah's. If the Lakers are not healthy, then I think you can make the argument that Utah's path could be a little easier. Because as it stands right now, they are playing whoever comes out of the play-in tournament of Denver, Golden State, Dallas, and Memphis.
So say Denver. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's say, well, it's the bottom one of two of those four. Let's say Denver says 7. Let's say it's Dallas, Golden State, or Memphis. They're probably beating any of those teams. Probably. Not handily, but probably beating them. And then the next round, you're looking at Clippers, Lakers, or Phoenix. Depending on how those shake out, you're probably looking at Phoenix.
Yeah, I'd have them to beat my Suns.
Yeah, I think they can beat them. And then you're facing Clippers or Lakers in the next round. So it's going to be a cakewalk because Denver's going to come on. Denver's not finishing that low, I don't think. So if the Lakers get healthy, they could pass the Jazz and the Jazz go to 2. And then now you're looking at potentially a Denver matchup in the first round, and now you don't know what can happen at that point. Whereas Brooklyn, you're not seeing Milwaukee or Philly for a while, probably, depending where you finish. I will say this. If it's Brooklyn, Miami in the first round of the playoffs, that could be a problem. Because nobody wants to see Miami.
Right.
Because you know how they're going to play. They're going to play hard. You got Jimmy Butler who goes crazy in the playoffs. That would not be an ideal matchup. Not just for Brooklyn, for anybody. Nobody wants to see Miami in the first round. So, but I'm still taking Brooklyn. Too much firepower. James, Kevin Durant, Kyrie. I don't see how you're going to beat them 4 times out of 7.
So for me, all right, if you're asking me right now who is the better of the 2 teams, I'm going to say Utah because Utah has absolutely no glaring weaknesses. But come playoff time, as Devan just mentioned, reality is stars take over because everyone knows what everyone is doing by that time. This is not the NFL. Like everyone knows everyone's plays by this time. So it then comes down to execution and star players. And Coach correctly mentioned the easier path of the 2, obviously, is out east. And in a situation where you're going to have to see, you may even see, let us say for argument's sake, you get out of the loser of the playing tournament, whatever you want to call it. And then you can have a situation where you can see the Lakers or Clippers in the second round, and the Lakers/Clippers again in the conference final. Like, that's brutal. Mm-hmm. And especially if, let's say, for argument's sake, that the Lakers are fully healthy, that is like a rough schedule. And I would not expect them to get past Lakers in any playoff series with a fully healthy LeBron James and Anthony Davis. It's just too much firepower. I know at the start of the season, both me and Nick wondered how much, how could this actually work with those 3 players? But I want to see, wow, James Harden has made me a believer in all of this because he is the guy who has made this work. Make no mistake about that. The sacrifices he has made in terms of turning down shots to be their playmaker. Granted, Kyrie Irving did not have to come out and say he's a point guard. I'm like, it wasn't going to be you. You don't pass the basketball. So, that was obvious. But what James is doing on a night, and I don't think he is getting enough credit for what's going on there in Brooklyn. Nightly triple doubles, leading the league in assists, and by a mile at 11 assists per game. Like when you have that, arguably as I don't want to say your 3rd best player, but the guy who's taking the 3rd most shots in your team is James Harden, then you are in for a very, very, very long night or a short night, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that team, and if they can manage to just get some brand of rim protection. Granted, when Jeff Green is on the floor as their 5, their offense is just through the charts, through the roof, like it's almost unstoppable. But if they can get any sort of defensive presence at the rim beyond DeAndre Jordan, I am not sure if any team can beat the Nets in the 7.
What about you, Neil?
What they said. Because honestly, ditto. Because you guys said it so correctly. Denver is playing well, but
Utah.
Sorry, I'm thinking of Denver. But the reason why I was thinking about Denver is because last playoffs in the bubble, you know, we saw Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell go head to head, and it was awesome. It went to 7 games, but in the end, they came up short. And I'm wondering, you know, it's all fine and good to see how they're playing well. I'm glad for them that they're playing well and proving themselves. But I wonder in the playoffs if they can, especially with some of the matchups that they're going to have later on in the playoff series, in the playoff brackets, I'm wondering if they can sustain this play for that long. As Justin said, and as Coach said, people are going to be game planning for you for 7 games. It's not like, oh, I can see you, you know, tonight, maybe tomorrow night, and then, you know, I don't see you for the rest of the season, or I see you probably a month from now or whatever. People are going to be focusing on you. And while they are, again, they're playing really well now, but I wonder how they're going to adapt and react when defenses are focusing mainly on those perimeter shooters, working on that pick and roll between, you know, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. So it's just going to be interesting. Mike Conley, for example, how is he going to play in the playoffs, especially as he's playing really well now. Brooklyn, though, I mean, they have 3 of the greatest scorers probably the NBA has ever seen. I mean, if you make a list of top 20 players of scoring, just purely putting the ball in the basket, they're on that list. And, you know, they are in the East, unfortunate to say. I agree with Coach. I don't think they want to see a Miami, because Miami, even though they're not playing their best, well, they're doing what they can with what they have this season. But that is a team when defense ramps up for them in the playoffs. So, yeah, I just really trying to fill time, but I agree with both of you guys for sure.
The moment you've all clearly, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, putting full coach lens on, when Utah gets in the playoffs, generally what always gave them issues was us. Right? I think we knocked them out 3 years in a row, something like that. First year, you can probably argue Donovan Mitchell's rookie year. You can't expect him to lead a team, of course, obviously. No, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3. We kept seeing each other, it seemed like. And it just came down to Gobert being a bit of a liability when we went small. And, you know, I think they match up okay with the Lakers because Anthony Davis has to be on the floor, obviously. Now, obviously, AD can stretch the floor a little bit and move Gobert to the perimeter some. But I think the bigger issues is probably with the Clippers for them, because the Clippers have 2 elite perimeter defenders, 3 if you count Pat Bev. So you're going to neutralize Donovan Mitchell a little bit. You're going to neutralize Conley a little bit. You have Ibaka, who can play on the perimeter, get Gobert away from the basket a little bit. I think that's the matchup that they probably don't want to see, just in terms of I just don't know how well it would go for them. I think it'd be a great series. I do think that Utah can definitely win it because they're playing on such a high level of team basketball it's hard to beat when you have a very cohesive team. There's no denying that. And that might be the only thing that you can't measure that we all may be underestimating. If they're truly a unit that generally loves playing together, then you can't put a number on that, and that might be enough to take them to the championship. So we'll just have to see what happens. But my betting money is on the team with the 3 best scores, because the plays go out the window in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, things might be going right in Utah, but things aren't going so good in Boston. And I know Justin was itching to get to this point. Clearly, he's grinning from ear to ear. So clearly there's a problem in Boston, guys. Are the Celtics in trouble at this stage? And really, what can or should they do about it?
I'm guessing I'm going to start. Reality is, right, and I think this point is lost on too many pundits, too many GMs. Boston's team is kind of, I want to say, badly put together because there are players who they drafted and whatever not, but it's missing a key element into which I don't think Danny Ainge ever relays, and it's always been playmaking. maybe you can say, well, they had it last year because they had Gordon Hayward and Marcus Smart was not injured. But when he overvalued, and you actually want to say overvalued, because when you hear him passing up these big trades, he passed up on getting Kawhi Leonard. He thought it was too much what they're asking for. And he passed up on Paul George and a chance to get Anthony Davis, figuring that, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are, these transcendent stars or rising stars. He kind of forgot one thing in all of this. And then you then saw him turn around and then settle for Kyrie Irving. All of these players that he's gone after, the Kyrie Irvings, Jason Tatum in drafting and Jaylen Brown in drafting, they are not natural playmakers. And even when he brought in Kemba Walker in free agency, now I know Neil is a guy who loves scoring. Well, if you see him on the basketball court, he doesn't really pass many. So he doesn't understand.
Come on, don't do that, Justin. Don't.
So I know Neil is
like, the object of the game is to score the ball. So
you see what I mean? And when you look at all these teams now, right, it is a situation where championship teams need a level of playmaking. And that's part of the reason why I'm not a believer in the Clippers. And yes, Coach said that the Clippers may present a problem for Utah, but there's a disconnect because, again, with them, the same thing with Boston, you see a bunch of isolation scorers. You do Williams, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. It is not a surprise they couldn't get past Denver, and it's not a surprise what is going on in Boston. It is not for lack of playing defense. I know people saying that Boston is lacking some perimeter shooting when Kemba is hurt and Kemba is not being the same guy. But you saw the situation unfold against Miami. All Miami did was to counteract their isolation scoring, was to slow them down in half court and play a zone. So then Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown can attack or do what they want to do, and Kemba Walker is basically the same player as them, just smaller and likes to spot up, shoot threes, or take threes off the dribble. Without that playmaking, without that, connectivity to make sure the other players get involved as well, and that, just so that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown don't beat the dots off the basketball. Yeah, Boston is always going to be what you're seeing right now, and it is not a surprise that they've gotten to, I want to say, 3 out of 4 Eastern Conference Finals and just can't get any further.
I think you're definitely on the right page for sure. And maybe even something I never thought was the point guards that they have had in years past maybe aren't conducive to helping Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown be the best they can be. But at the end of the day, you need as many guys that can score the basketball as possible. So it's tough. Who do you get to fill that role? And again, we're judging them on not having Marcus Smart, who is arguably their MVP. I know he's not an MVP, but he is their glue for their team.
And basically their point guard. That is who is their playmaker.
Exactly. So, we are judging them maybe a bit unfairly because we don't know where they would be if they...
Yeah, I agree. A tad bit unfairly.
Time. But, you can only judge with what they have right now. So, do they need something else? Maybe. But what can they go get? I don't know. A small, an infield single, like a George Hill type of guy who shoots 40% from 3, doesn't need the ball in his hands, that type of guy, but he's not an all-time facilitator. He's solid. He's very, very solid. He's very, very good. Is that enough to move the needle? I don't know. I just think the most important thing they can do at the trade deadline is get Marcus Smart back. And that might be all they need.
Well, guys, you can let us know in the comments, who are you looking forward to seeing making some moves with the trade deadline looming? Which teams do you think really need to add another piece, and which piece should they add? You never know. The GMs could be scouting our comment section looking for some suggestions. So let us know what you think in the comments. I'm also now going to put you 3 on the spot. One question and the justification for your answer.
Well, start with
Devin,
Neil,
I'm going.
If we're putting people, start with Neil.
This boy
Okay
don't ever
then.
like to start, boy. I mean, okay,
So
fair enough.
Neil,
Go ahead.
going to
Hmm.
start with you. Who do you have as this season's MVP at this stage and why?
Yes, Neil, who do you have?
Who do I have? LeBron James. No, seriously. I
And this is
have.
no Laker, but
When
be
you look at
clear
Joel
for our
Embiid. No,
viewers.
no, 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 no. I was being facetious when I was talking about LeBron James. I mean, he is playing great, but I think that it is. You cannot deny the fact that Joel Embiid is playing at such a top tier level. I saw the game where he had 50 and what was his numbers? 50 and something crazy like 14 and whatever it was on 55% shooting or whatever. Like he is playing amazing. This is Joel Embiid that everybody was saying trust the process, and they had the up years, down years, the experiment with Jimmy Butler. All of these things are now culminating in the fact of Joel Embiid. I don't know if it's him reaching his potential or finally deciding, you know what, I really am the best post player in the NBA. He can hit the three, he can hit the mid range, he can draw fouls, he can take you off the dribble in the post. He can do it all. And he is a rim protector and a rebounder. So to me, when you see that Philadelphia is number one in the Eastern Conference and they're playing some of their best basketball probably for the decade, well, last you're seeing the emergence of a person that players like Shaq, Charles Barkley, those players that were really dominant down low and wanting him to impose his will at 7'2" or 3" or how much ever he is. They want him to push around his way and get to the key and stop taking fadeaway jumpers and be more assertive on both sides of the basketball because it's very important. Yes, his offensive game is rounding out, but I see his commitment on defense and very importantly, he is still having fun. Joel Embiid is still smiling. He's still joking. He still has the wherewithal to still have fun with. So for me, it's Joel Embiid. I think that Philly is now rounding out into that team that we were expecting in the last 4 or 5 seasons. Um, if they're going to make the finals, that's a different thing to talk about. But it will be interesting to see how they play going into the middle to the latter stages of the Eastern Conference. Go ahead, Justin,
Devin?
man. Come on, start hiding.
Oh, I thought I was going to let Devin go.
I'll
So I
bring up
feel MVP conversation should at least start or be mentioned. You have to mention LeBron James, and that's not my MVP, but you always have to mention it. And year 18, and I don't like to throw in that storyline just because, but year 18 and playing games without Anthony Davis, and then having a stretch without Dennis Schroeder, your only other playmaker. And yes, Neil, you know me, I like players who can pass and facilitate, and like just people who just put up shots. But yeah, like having to
You
do
have
that.
something to say. You have something to say. We'll talk about it after the show.
But yeah, like so having to play without Dennis Schroeder for a bit and having to play without Anthony Davis and playing these ridiculous minutes in year 18 and the guy who has gone to 10 NBA finals and made on top of those 10 NBA finals, I want to say 5 other deep playoff runs. At 36 years of age, I think numbers are correct. 25.6 points per game, 8 assists, 8 rebounds per block and a steal per game. That's just incredible. But as you correctly mentioned, Neil, the MVP probably is Joel Embiid. And I mean, this is not to say there's a runaway candidate here. I think when you look at him, LeBron James, with then Kawhi Leonard and Nikola Jokic, this is a really tight race. Steph Curry, if you want to throw him in, and Damian Lillard. But I'm going to run through Joel Embiid's stats quite quickly, like 29.6 points per game, 11.2 rebounds per game, 3 assists, block, and a steal in there. And then the stat that jumps out to me, half of Philly's losses have come with Joel Embiid missing games. Like that's just showing you like they're 1-5 without him, and I think with him they're like 21 and they want to say 21-7 or something like that. That just goes to show you the impact he's had. And Neil mentioned not just on the offensive side of the basketball, but on the defensive end as well. Him and Ben Simmons making this arguably a top 2 or top 3 defensive team in the league right now. I think any MVP conversation right now really should start with Embiid.
I think you both are correct, and I think he probably is the front runner right now. He's not my choice, and I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But I do think it's interesting that nobody is talking about an MVP coming from the Jazz, who are the
It's weird,
best
isn't
team
it?
in the league by 5 games. They're dominating everyone. Quinn Snyder should win Coach of the Year, and he probably will.
He should.
But is that a testament to team, or is it you get thrown into the small market, don't have a big public face type of issue? Maybe unfairly, and it could be, hey, they're just playing so well together that not one player is the most important player. So I'm just throwing it out there as I think it's a strange thing. Um, Jordan Clarkson should probably win Sixth Man of the Year. They'll get awards, but nobody's talking about them being MVP. They're talking about Jokic being an MVP, and they're seventh, right? And some other guys that you mentioned that are down there. So that is interesting. My MVP is James Harden right now. A little
I
bit of a
was waiting. I was waiting for the homer pick.
it's
I
a
was
little
just
bit
about
of
to
a
say,
homer pick.
no bias at all.
No bias whatsoever, of course. But I think it does fit the narrative of obviously he forced his way out of Houston, right? For right or for wrong, you can agree, disagree all you want. That's how the game's played nowadays. But to go there and to be on the run that they're on, they dropped their last one, but that was inevitable. They won 9 in a row, probably the hardest stretch, maybe one of the hardest 9-game stretches anyone's had, that whole West Coast road trip. All without Kevin Durant, albeit except for the first 3 games, I think. Kyrie's been hurt, right? It's been a lot of just James doing it on his own. And, he enjoys proving people wrong, right? Everyone made him out to be this villain because of how things got handled. But he's going out there and proving, like, no, like, I can be whatever type of player the team needs me to be. They need me to score 40, I can go score 40. If Kevin and Kyrie are on, I can score 16 and throw out 17 assists, right? The way he can change the way he plays to just make the team better, I think is pretty remarkable. Now I'll throw this out there. If Philly ends third in the East and Brooklyn is first by a mile, does that change your vote?
Oh, for sure, most definitely. And I kind of feel bad not throwing James in the MVP conversation because earlier, why this whole experiment, for lack of a better word, has worked in Brooklyn, in my estimation, has been because of James Harden. Because, as you mentioned, KD has been out for a while. I mean, I'm not sure if you looked at it, Neil. Kyrie Irving's numbers have been crazy this season. I'm not sure, like, his scoring numbers have been, like, out of this world.
Sage and all.
But as Coach said, like, all of this has been, like, James Harden says, okay, I'm going to play make, so I'm going to make sure to get everyone their looks, their touches, where they want it, where they need it. I'm going to guard these bigger players. So you see, James Harden is a guy that's probably marking their fours with Kevin Durant out. So he's been a guy inside the paint, like, bruising, and then still finding a way to get his own shot. So yeah, I do believe James Harden should be in the MVP conversation. And if indeed Brooklyn does end up with the East's best record, or if the league's best record, then I think James Harden really should get a look in. But I think let's give it to LeBron James. I don't know.
I have no problem with that.
Don't get it. I think
No.
if things keep going, I think it's Embiid.
Yeah.
Now that we're having this MVP discussion, Coach, I wanted to put it to you. What makes the MVP for you? Because, you have that back and forth and the debates emerge. Is the MVP the best player in the league, or is the MVP the best player who has the most impact on their respective team? For you, what makes the MVP?
It's tough to answer because I think if it goes by the player who has the most impact for their team, LeBron should have won it 8 years in a row. Just to be completely fair. But we all know that's not how it goes, because eventually you start taking stats for granted and it just becomes expected. So I think LeBron's productivity through all that time was just expected, right? It's like, this is what LeBron is, and the MVP has almost become almost a surprise in terms of, like, it's the guy who has always been good, but we needed him to make that extra leap. Like Embiid is doing this year. Embiid's always been, not always, when he's healthy, he's always been dominant, right? But this is the first year he's been healthy the whole time, knock on wood, obviously, and still being dominant and upping his productivity, and now they're winning more games. So now he gets the nod because they're winning more. We went through the same thing with James in Houston. James gets it. Mike's second year, I think, D'Antoni's second year with the team. The next year, James was better, but we won less. So now the media judged it on, well, Milwaukee won more games, we have to give it to Giannis. Well, James had better numbers, so is it numbers based or is it winning based? Thing I brought up earlier, nobody's talking about an MVP from the Jazz, and they're the best team in the league by 5 games. So I think every year the criteria changes for right or wrong. I don't know. For me, it should be, I think you should almost have 2 MVPs. And I can't say it's an MVP and an IP, the most important player. The most valuable player should be league-wide, who is the best player. And that should be taken regardless of, I think. Because although winning is very, very important, obviously, and that is a mark on your effect on a team in a certain way, the rest of your roster always matters with that. Whereas if you're the most important player, that means you're the most important player with your team. That team would have no chance to be in the position they are in if you weren't on it anymore. So, and I didn't come up with that idea. I saw that on Twitter last year. So I'm taking credit for that. I'm not taking any credit for that. But it's tricky. Like, it's very hard. And I think the way it is now, it has to be whoever's putting up the most impressive stats on the top 3 team in the league. And that's what you have to go with. I think that's the most fair way to do it, even though it's not fair, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about you, Neil?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Marsha. I don't. Oh, sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
I mean, what about me? What I think about MVP?
Yeah, it was just...
Yeah, I mean, I agree with how Coach broke it down. For me, I think you definitely have to factor in the most part on the best team in a given conference or the league. You have to look at stats, of course. You have to look at his availability, his health. There are a lot of things that go into it. And I mean, yes, we saw that year, Russ. I think they were when he won his MVP. He was averaging a triple-double, but I don't think they were a top 14.
I hated that. I hated it.
But the reason why he got it is because his stats were so ridiculous for a time where, to do that and the pace of the game, everything like that. So I understand why he got it. So
I don't, because then when you look at the next 2 years, he averaged a triple-double again.
And didn't
but then just in that ties into now it becomes expected. Oh yeah, he'll do it. That's just him.
And here in lays a go ahead, sorry Neil, not to cut you off.
No, I was saying yes he got a triple double, but his team was no better. His team is not like, okay, the first season you did it, you were in 5th, 6th, you got MVP, you got a triple double again. Your team is still in the doldrums of the West, like it.
So then, but here's it. Should an MVP matter from year to year to year? Because I'm not based on what you did last year. It should be on what you're doing this year. And this is the problem I have with the MVP award. It's media driven for whatever sounds like the best storyline. Because the Russell Westbrook season basically highlights that. Oh, this is the first time somebody's averaged a triple-double since the big Oscar Robertson did it in however long. All right, so then you give it to him on this this team that's not even getting home court advantage in the first round, a 6 seed. And then and even got into arguments with people say, oh, but he he averaged a triple double. How are you not giving it to Russ? Okay. Well, he did it 2 straight years after that, and you didn't give it to him then. So what's the problem? It is just basically whatever the media decides is the best storyline going into this, and they have a significant problem with it. So to cut out any BS, and I understand how hard the award is because there is no direct or no criteria written in stone.
Formula, yeah.
So then just give it to the damn well best player in the league. And if it means that LeBron James is going to win it every year from 2007 to right now in the Lord's year of 2021, then that's just all it means. Just give it to the best player. Let's not get into this storyline nonsense. Oh, well, this guy averaged a triple-double. Oh, now Joel Embiid is finally healthy. Giannis is making Milwaukee a relevant team that hasn't been relevant since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Let's stop trying to find storylines and just give it. Like when Steph won back-to-back MVPs, he was clearly the best player in the league at that time. LeBron James and Michael Jordan, in my estimation, have been robbed of MVPs, and they look no further than one of Karl Malone's MVP years that Michael Jordan clearly should have won, and also Derrick Rose's MVP year. And this is not to say Derrick Rose is not a good player at that time, but let's be honest, like we just get caught up into this narrative of what fits these storylines, and should a storyline really matter? Because as coach rightfully said, a lot of that comes down to who you're playing with. And you're robbing players of what they deserve, because when we look back now, we're going to want to judge the greatest of all times. We're going to get in great debates. And a lot of these debates come down to how many titles you've won, how many MVPs, how much individual accolades that you've won. And you're robbing good players or great players of titles that really belong to them.
But Justin, really quickly, Marcia, Justin, the media, who votes for the MVP?
Media.
Exactly. What is their job daily?
Covering the league. But
and
again,
come up with storylines, as a former journalist and a journalist by heart, you would have to know
Once
that
a journalist, always a journalist.
Always a journalist.
So. Yes, please. There's no former. There's no former attached, please. Let's not do
that. Sorry, my fault. But that's what I'm saying. The media, what they do is they tell stories. They craft stories. Yes, they report. But let's look at ESPN, for example. How many times you see Stephen A. Smith daily? None of that is reporting, or very few of that is reporting. So he has to come up with stories. And at the end of the day, when you have your ballot and you're remembering the season, you're like, oh, wow, I remember when, Joel Embiid took boom, 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 boom. Take that, like I have no problem with choosing, say, Russell Westbrook for the triple-double. That's fine. I understand. I would be upset if they gave it to him the second year just because it's a triple-double.
But hold on.
It really
then why are you upset? Because if you're saying that you were good with him winning the first year, then he should have won the second and the third year. And
but you just said it's not formulaic. You just said it's not formulaic. So
but you're saying about storyline. So you've done. Then that's a problem with storyline.
But everybody read that story already. Nobody don't want to see that story again.
But then it gets fickle. So just give it to the damn well best player, and let's call it Wally, and give it to LeBron James for 10 straight years, and let's just understand him as the best player in the league and whatever.
As a Laker fan,
guys, I'm going to let you settle this debate in the comments. Let us know, which side are you on? Team Justin or Team Neil? On what basis should the MVP title be, decided? As well as to let us know, who do you have for your MVP for this 2020-2021 season? And as we approach the end and we're talking about stories, the media, and storylines, I'm going to put you guys on the spot again. Quickly tell me, what is the, let's say, most anticipated storyline you have for the second half of the NBA season? Justin, I'm going to start with you.
I'm going to say, as odd as it sounds, the New York Knicks and their potential of finally getting back to the playoffs. I'm not sure if you all saw. I mean, everyone's seen the clip by now of how the New Yorkers running well outside Madison Square Garden. I want to say 3/4 of them without masks, by the way. Shame on you, New Yorkers. Shame.
That's for another show.
Yeah. Yeah, but
it's an entirely different show.
An entirely different show. Yeah, I'm sure a particular Dr. Folky's not exactly pleased. Look, yeah, the New York Knicks. Neil's touching on storylines, and you always hear the NBA is so much better when New York is doing well, and I'm not sure I believe that crap anyhow. But yes, we touched on how good a player Julius Randle has been these last 2 seasons, and now finally making an All-Star game, deservedly so. I think they've unearthed a great talent in Emmanuel quickly. Derrick Rose here being to shepherd him, Obi Toppin, highlight rookie, whatever you have there. And Tom Thibodeau, granted, I'm expecting Tom Thibodeau to burn out these players at some point during the season. But it's great to see, New York making a playoff run. Will they stay as high as the 4 seed going forward? Who knows? But I think that's the biggest storyline going into the second half for me.
And Neil?
For me, I think it's going to be injuries, actually. I do like some of the storylines out there. I know LaMelo is playing really well, bringing some excitement to Buzz City. Justin touched on it, the New York Knicks. If the Lakers can actually pull it off and make the run, the Clippers, there's so many different storylines, but for me, it's the injury. There's a quick turnaround time for these players to come for this season, and they're playing. It's a weird season in that you're playing under the COVID situation. Players are missing games because of protocol and that kind of thing. So to me, the biggest storyline for me would be injuries, and to see how normal injuries and then the COVID injuries, if you want to call it that. But no, I'm serious. Protocol, because you have you got to miss 5 days. That's what, 2 games, 3 games. So that is an impactful thing for some of these, especially some of the upper echelon of the NBA. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who plays, who gets injured, or who has to deal with protocols. And that's my take.
And Devan, to wrap us all up.
Yeah, I was also going to choose health, but Neil stole that one. But I am going to piggyback on that a little bit more. I think health is going to easily be the most important thing that happens, because if you look at the Eastern Conference, 4 through the 4th seed through the 10th seed, all losses. So you're looking at one key player missing 2 weeks, whether it's COVID protocol or an injury, whatever. You can drop from home court in the playoffs to play-in game in a week. And I think that's the rest of the way through. So I mean, how much longer do we have in the regular season? 2 months, something like that. That's not a lot of time. And with it being so close, and the West it's not that close, but it's not that far off. That's going to be an issue. If your best player, second best player, misses 2 weeks, you can fluctuate in the standings a lot. Now, I think Brooklyn is a little immune to it because they have enough guys to sustain the storm. Philly probably has enough. Obviously, if Embiid goes down, things will get dicey. Milwaukee, obviously, again, this goes for everybody. If you layer, things are going to get dicey. Brooklyn's probably the only team that can sustain it. So it's going to be interesting. And with that, I'll add this as being a coach who does not have a job currently. As another storyline is the coaching carousel. It's already starting right now. We saw with Minnesota, it feels like yesterday, I guess it was almost a week ago now. They've already made the change and hired their next guy, which is a little unique.
Yeah.
Atlanta just fired their guy today. Pierce got let go today. They've hired Nate McMillan as their interim. If Atlanta goes on a run, very well they could keep Nate McMillan for the following year. There's a lot of these storylines developing in the league that could, not only impact this season, but next year going forward on what's going to happen. So, and health plays a very big part in that, as unfortunately Lloyd Pierce found out today in Atlanta. He hasn't had a healthy team all year, and he gets canned as soon as they get healthy. So,
and then what's worse, I think he left for the birth of his child, came back, and then was fired. I'm like, yikes, that's rough.
Yeah, it's tough business. I'll say that. But the very high, so it's worth it in that regard. You just got to stay the course the rest of the time.
Well, Devin, thank you so very much for joining us once again here on this Just In. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And thank you so much for joining us for those watching on YouTube Live or those of you watching the replay. Be sure to like this video, comment, subscribe to the channel because your numbers help us here in terms of our reach. So like, subscribe, and share with your family and friends. You can find us on all of our social media outlets. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, where you can catch Justin on Thursdays for the mailbag. Justin, do you have anything special coming up this Thursday with Adam?
Nothing really special. We're not even met to talk about our plans going forward for the episode, but probably just do some more NFL off-season talk because, as we all know, JJ Watt shockingly chose Arizona today, and that's a big surprise. And then there's no Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. The watch. Where will they be traded, and if so, to whom? So I figured that we're going to touch on some more NFL offseason because it seems that that's a league that just never sleeps.
Well, you can join them at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Barbados time over on our Instagram channel. And be sure to join us back here again on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Barbados time for our next edition of This Just In. Thank you for joining us and have a good night. Bye.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Good night, everybody.